To create these pieces with the cylinders in it right here, we're going to need to use a couple of new tools. We're going to use the Solidify modifier to add thickness to a cylinder. And we're also going to use the Bridge Edge Loops tool to connect these two. So let's start working on that. To do that, I want to begin with an empty view here. So I'm going to hide this vehicle main scene collection that we've created right up here. And then I'm going to create a new cylinder. And I want to point out something here with the scene collection. Now that I've turned this off, and one of the objects within that scene collection is selected here, if I press Shift A and I go to Mesh and Cylinder, we can't see it here. You can see that it's been created inside that scene collection where we had a selection. So just to warn you that if you ever create an object and you can't see it, check the scene collection and maybe you have it inside a collection that's been hidden away. So I'm going to take this cylinder 5 that we just created and drag it up to the very top scene collection heading, and that will get it out of that group there and out here on its own. I'll also twirl the reference images back up there. So that's the cylinder we just created. However, since we've done that, I've lost my settings panel down here. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new one. I'll just hit delete and let's create a new one. So with that scene collection selected at the top heading here, now I'll do this again. Cylinder, and there it is. All right, so what I want for this is maybe, let's try 12. Let's try 12 sides, and I want the cap fill to be empty, so I'm just going to choose nothing for that cap fill there. We need to spin it in the y-axis, I believe. Let me turn the vehicle back on. Yeah, let's spin it in the y-axis, RY90. There we go. And I'll scale it down and hit the period key. Now for this here, it looks like it's quite a bit thinner, so I'll hit S and X and scale in like this. And what I'm going to do is begin with the inside, so I'll hit S and kind of scale in. So what I'm doing is I'm creating this part of the cylinder right here. Now what I need to do is give it thickness, about this much here. So what let's do is use that Solidify modifier. So let's come over here to the modifiers panel, click Add Modifier, and let's choose Solidify here. And you can see it just barely added a little thickness. If we click and drag in the thickness field, we can add thickness here. However, what I'd like to do is apply the rotation and scale that we've created for this object and then adjust the thickness there, because I feel like we're going to get a more realistic setting here. So if I hit the N key, let's go to the Item tab, and you can see that, of course, it has rotation because we turned the cylinder 90 degrees in the y-axis, and it also has scale. We've scaled it down quite a bit. We can apply the scale and the rotation, so these are 0 and 1s once again, telling Blender that this is the default size for this particular object. So to do that, we can just press Control A. And Control A brings up this menu, and we can choose to apply the location, the rotation, scale, but I just want to apply the rotation and scale here. And watch what happens to these over in the sidebar. So Control A, apply the rotation and scale, and now you can see these are 1s and 0s, and that thickness, that negative 0.16 meters, turns out it's a lot bigger than we thought, right? Now that we've applied that. So what I'm going to do is hold the Shift key down, click and drag in the thickness field, and I'm going to bring this back down to about where it should be. So if I look at the image, I'm thinking right about here maybe. I'm looking at this. Now what we can do is duplicate this to create this piece up here. So what I'm going to do is go to the side view, and I'm going to hit the G key and move this over to where this is supposed to be, and then I'll scale it down like this. Kind of put it right in here. Scale it down. So there we go, right about there. Now the other one, it's hard to see. We can't really see it here, but I think it's right in here, right there. So what let's do is let's hit Shift D to duplicate this and bring it up here, and then I'll hit S and scale. However, if I scale this down in all the axes, X, Y, and Z, here, when we go to the front view, it's thinner than this one. And that's not quite what we want. We want them to be about the same size. And in fact, it looks like it needs to be a little bit thicker anyway. But to make sure it's the same size, let's press Control Z. And remember, we can turn off one of the axes. So I'm going to turn off the x-axis while we scale in the z and the y. So let's go back to the side view. I'll hit S, Shift X, and scale it down to about like this. Then if we hit the 1 key, they're the same width. Now if I select both of them, I can scale them back out on the X because it looks like it's a little bit thicker. I'm just looking at the reference image there. So maybe about like that. Let's try that. Now we need to connect them together. But remember that we've still got the solidify modifier on each of these. We can now, with this one selected, let's just select this new one here. We can press Shift and click in the thickness, and we can increase or decrease the thickness there as well, something like that, let's say. And now we need to connect them together with this part right here. However, if we try and join them, we can select both of the objects and press Control J to join the objects into one. So let's try that, Control J. Well, this changes because it defaults to the setting of the one we chose last. So let's undo that, Control Z. And we need to apply the modifier for both of these objects before we join them together. So let's just select this one here first. I'll hit Apply, then this one, and hit Apply. Now if we select them both and press Control J, they become one object. You can see it here. Just one object. Still called cylinder, but it's just one object. These two are now. All right, so now let's tab into Edit Mode and hit the 3 key to go to Face Mode. And let's bridge the edge loops between this one and this one. So what I'm going to do is choose these two faces here, Shift, select these two, and then let's bridge these edge loops. To do that, we can press Control E, or we can come up here to the Edge menu and bridge edge loops. But let's go ahead and press Control E and click Bridge Edge Loops. And there we go. That connects those two pieces together. I'd kind of like to pull this in and pull this out. So if we select this, maybe I can go back to the side view and pull this out. No, actually, it's this one I want to do, isn't it? So let's do this. I'm going to pull this out and kind of rotate it just a bit, just so we get this kind of flat part right in here, like that. And then I'm going to insert an edge loop with Control R so I can grab this edge right here. And let's bring this in. I'll hit G and bring that in a bit. Let's see how this works. Something like that. All right. Now what we need is this piece up here. And for that, I think we need yet another cylinder. So let's go ahead and do that. I'll press Shift A, Mesh, Cylinder. This one, however, we need cap fills on the top and the bottom, so I'll change it to Triangle Fan. And now what let's do is turn it, RY90, scale it down, and let's bring it into place. I'll hit the G key and bring it up, hit the period key to zoom in, and let's place it. Where do you think it should be? Maybe right in here. You know, now may be a good time to bring back that vehicle. Let's go ahead and do that. So there's that. I think we're going to need to move this and this. Let's slide these over to where they should be, right around in here. It looks like it should probably come out just a bit, or I've pulled that face out just a little too far. Let's tab back into edit mode, and maybe we should select that edge in there. I can kind of grab that edge there, and maybe let's bring that back out like this. And maybe we can grab that edge here. Let's bring them both back out like this. There we go. So it's probably better to make those kinds of adjustments before or after I bring the vehicle back, but that's okay. Let's now take this and put it into place. Let's scale it in the X to about the right size. Scale it down. Yeah, let's put it right about here, let's say. Like this. Now we can bridge these two edge loops, but first we need to join them together. So I'll select this and press Ctrl J. There we go. Tab into edit mode, go to face mode, and let's select this face, and let's do this and this. I'm not sure that's going to work real well. Let's do this and this, and this and this. Let's try that. Control E, bridge edge loops. Let's grab this one edge here and move it out a bit like this. There we go. So I think that's the basic shape that we want. Yeah, so what we can do is maybe smooth this. Let's go to Object, Shade Smooth, and then let's come down here to Object Data, turn on Auto Smooth, and I'm going to click and drag this up until it kind of cleans up a little bit. Yeah, over 90 is too much, but I think around 60 is pretty good. Yeah, let's try that. And then I think I'll move it over to the other side as well with Shift D and hit the X key and slide that over like that. There we go. So we've got those pieces generally in place. There's more we can do, of course, but I think what let's work on next is let's talk a bit about Booleans. Creating this circular inset for this piece is going to require something more than just inserting edge loops and then extruding in. We're actually going to have to use a cylinder as a cutting tool to cut this circular hole into this object. So let's work on that next.